What are some of the subtle things we do that can communicate neglect to kids?
Very good. I think so. The pandemic had a double-edged effect. I don't know about when I was in Ghana by then, but I think the first one was that it brought everybody home. But bringing everybody home did not really solve the problem because we were still caught up on our devices. And when these kids wanted to talk to their parents, some parents, what they do, those who can afford, they buy tablets for the children, like, oh, just be on your tablet. Yeah, I mean, have games and fun with your kids. So if someone is a child and they're home and they think, oh, today mommy is not going to work, mommy probably is going to work from home and stuff like that. But then they think they're going to have time to talk with you, to play with you, and etc. Right? But you are rather busy on your phone. You are rather busy behind your laptop. You're not creating time for these kids. They feel very neglected. So you can have a parent who they are home, but they're actually not at home in the minds of the children. I think we read a paper back home, back in school, where kids whose parents were working from home during the pandemic period, they were asked were their parents really at home. The parents were at home actually, but the kids said they were not there because it's not about your physical presence. They need your time. They need your attention, right? And I think we carry these things again into relationship. Imagine if you're in a relationship or you're married to someone, and then your partner is home, but all the time they are busy on their phone. They are not giving you the attention. They are not talking to you. They are spending less time with you. It creates a lot of problem. Now, for kids, this emotional neglect actually impacts on so many things they have to do. One,
Today's conversation is about trauma and suicide. And it's a I find it a very, very important topic because all of us may have one thing or another going on that we may not even know may be impacting us. Some of us may have experienced suicidal ideations. Some may not know what it is, but may actually have experienced it. And then there may be those who may have heard friends or loved ones talk about their experiences and may not know how to help them. So today we want to talk about suicide, and then we talk about how some forms of trauma influence suicidality. So that's the whole idea of today's conversation. That's the whole aim of today's conversation. I want us to, as much as possible, share our thoughts through the chat space on Zoom. Ask all your questions, and I pray that we leave here with relevant information. Right. Having said that, we go straight to introduce our speaker for today. So our speaker is a very good friend of mine. He's a brother who now lives in the US. So he's a psychologist by training. He's a clinical health psychologist, actually. And he's presently doing his externship. So an externship is a residency. It's a specialty rotation that is done for people who are finishing their PhDs in the US. So, and his PhD is in health and clinical science as well. Yeah, so I hope I got it right. I'm sure you'll correct me if I didn't get it right, but that is our speaker. So at the moment, he is with the University of their university is rather called City University of New York, not University of New York, City University of New York. And he's done some visiting scholarship work at Lenox Hill Hospital. He's done some work with as a student rep for Anxiety and Depression Association of America. And then there's one that I can't seem to pronounce. It's called Hofstra University Wellness Center. That's where he's doing his psychology extension. So I'm happy to have my brother Felix Yerdon speak on this all-important topic. So Felix, are you there? Can you hear us, please?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. All right, and thanks everyone for your time. I'm trying to share my screen. I was wondering where you got all those other information from. Like, where did you get all these things?
Well, okay. I know you beyond many things, so you're good. So I'm going to, before you share your screen,
okay, sure.
I'll ask you all my questions, and then at the point that you want to share your screen, you can feel free to your screen. So I'm sure this is your first time on Open Therapy.
Correct.
Yes, and Open Therapy is a mental health podcast, as I introduced, and we are all in for mental because your research area is suicide and childhood adversity or small T trauma, as you guys will call it. We want to delve into it properly today. Yeah, so I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then if at any point in time you want to share your slides, feel free, and then you can
Okay.
share that. Right. So we are doing this over the next 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll invite some questions. In between, if there are some questions you need to answer, we will have you answer them. So my first question to you is that you and I sat in the same classroom. We're trying to figure out our life as psychologists. Then all of a sudden, you left to the US, and you told me about it. I was glad, but yeah, it happened.
Yeah.
Then, as clinical health psychologists, I mean, our specialty is more about it's behavioral medicine. So we are looking at health conditions, diabetes, hypertension, and all of that. Then the last time we spoke, you said that you are rather researching into something I love so much, trauma and suicide. And
Yeah.
then I got shocked. So I felt that, okay, let's talk about this. Then you started sending me so many articles you've published.
Oh, goodness.
So we have the researcher, the clinician with us. What exactly, I want us to take it, because we are looking at two huge topics. I want us to tell us what suicide is. Let's start with suicide, and then we bring in small T trauma. Maybe you explain that as time goes on. But this whole suicide thing, what is it?
Okay. All right. Thank you, Paul. And good evening to everyone back home in Ghana. I miss everyone, and happy Mother's Day to all the women on the show and those who watch it later on. So when we do talk about suicide, let me say it's very complex. It can be very complicated in terms of what really suicide is. The first idea that comes to people's mind is when completed suicide, like when people take their own life. The reason why it's a very important topic, even though it's complex in terms of what really makes people think that way, is because human as we are, almost every organism within the mammalian species, and I'm talking about both humans and animals, we do have a natural tendency that we want to leave. So, for example, even if you see like an animal, a sheep or a goat crossing the road and there is a car coming or anything, and it's like a threat to them, they may want to like escape so that they don't get hurt or they don't even die or lose their life, right? So the tendency to leave is something that comes to us naturally. Now, the big question becomes at which point or what makes people not only have a desire to leave, but they have a desire to die, which is very opposite to what a lot of people want. So suicide is that desire, that what we call like the suicide ideation, is that desire that people just want to take their own life. And here, let me say that there is a little bit difference between suicide ideation and then also a wish to die, right? And normally we see wish to die mostly in health setting or even in situations where people are going through a lot of pain. And when they are going through a lot of pain, they may not necessarily want to be the one responsible for taking their own life, but they just have a wish to die. Like people like, I wish I wasn't here anymore. I wish. So it's like it may start from a wish to die, but a wish to die is not necessarily a suicide ideation. So what is really suicide ideation? So suicide ideation is when an individual begins to think or they have thoughts about killing themselves, to be very direct, right? When you have thoughts about terminating your own life, when you have thoughts about ending your own life, and you want to be the one to do it yourself. Like I said, it's different from wish to die. Wish to die can be that maybe you are going through a lot of things and you wish you sleep and one day you don't wake up. You are not the one directly involved in terminating your own life, and that is wish to die. But with suicide, you begin to think about killing yourself, right? Terminating your own life. And which, like I said, is a very sad thing because human as we are, people would normally want to leave. So if someone is thinking about killing themselves, it raises a lot of questions as to what is causing that and what can be done to help those people. So that is at the ideation stage. For some people, they move beyond just thinking about killing themselves to planning, right? They start to plan, what can I do? How do I have to do it? And etc. Right? Details about that, we can delve into it. And then for some people, they may even attempt or act on the plan, right? And that is a suicide attempt. The suicide itself is more of like a completed suicide, right? So to answer your question directly, suicide is when someone kills themselves or terminates their own life. And it doesn't just happen spontaneously. For some people, they may have to start to think about it. Other people, they plan it, move beyond thinking to planning. And for some people, they attempt it, right? There are other psychological and medical conditions that may let people to be very impulsive in acting on something, but those are a bit rare, like impulsivity. But overall, suicide is a continuum risk. It's not like isolated cases. So they start from one end to the other. And understanding what is causing someone to think about it versus what is causing someone to plan it versus what are the risks that will let someone transition from one side to the other is all very important so that you know within the continuum right? Where do you put your interventions? So that is it all about suicide.
Wow. That's deep and that's revealing. So in essence, you're saying that when somebody experiences these thoughts or has these thoughts, depending on what the thought is doing, you determine whether it is actually a wish or an ideation.
Correct.
And if there's action to it, then it's probably an attempt. Am I
Yes.
good?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Then when completed, then we say that they've died by suicide.
Like suicide. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. So where do suicidal ideations come from?
Very good question. I don't know if that would let me share my slides now. Probably that might be a bit helpful.
I'm sure.
I'll try to kind of like go through. Okay, so you need to give me some sharing privileges.
Okay, so let's allow Felix share, but speak to it a bit.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak to it. Yeah, I'm going to speak to it. So suicide ideations comes from, it's very complex. Let me just start from that point of view. It's very complicated because it doesn't start from one. There isn't like a specific cause to suicide. It will surprise you to know that for over 50 years of researching about risk factors to suicide, there isn't any specific risk factor to suicide. So think of suicide behaviors more like how cancer research, a lot of terminal diseases are. There isn't a specific factor or thing that causes it, right? But there are a lot of factors that are associated with it. So there are a lot of things that are associated with suicide, so many of them through different approaches. The trauma bit is one piece of it, right? Trauma is one bit piece of it. And trauma refers to like any issues like psychological and emotional response to events in the ways that are very stressful, right? And trauma, we will definitely come to the trauma. But what really causes the suicide, childhood adversities, which I will do talk about it, is also one of the things when people go through a lot of abuses. The other thing, also thinking through the lens of suicide theory, is when people perceive themselves to be a burden to other people, what we call perceived burdensomeness. So someone is going through a problem in their life, and then they think that they are a burden to people, like they are worrying the people because of their health condition or financial condition or whatever situation it is. So when people begin to think of themselves as a burden, then it can also lead them to, if they want to relieve those people from the burden, they can start thinking about suicide, right? If also people feel that they are not connected, which leads to like loneliness and isolation. People are in a group, but they feel like no one loves them, no one cares about them. They don't feel integrated into a family. They don't feel integrated into a friend group. They don't feel integrated into their societies or wherever they find themselves. Think of it when you are in a group and they don't make you feel a sense of belongingness. So when people do not feel belong to a group, because we are social beings, right? If we don't feel belong to a group, it leads to us feeling isolated. Isolation can lead to loneliness. Currently in the US, there is what is called the loneliness epidemic, where a lot of young people are reporting feeling very lonely. Social media has not really helped because even though people connect with others digitally, but when they are really under stress and they need a real person to talk to, for some people, it can be very challenging. So loneliness is also a cause of people thinking about suicide. And also when people think that they are a burden to other people, it can also lead to them thinking about relieving those people from the burden, and then they also think about suicide. Another thing that can also lead people to thinking about suicide is also pain, emotional pain, right? It can be an emotional pain, and several things can lead to the emotional pain. Trauma in any form and shape can also lead to people feeling emotional pain. Betrayal can lead to emotional pain. When people are going through different forms of abuses, it can lead to emotional pain. There is also another construct or another thing called the psychological pain, right? Which is also related to like depression or when people are really going through a lot of psychological distress or situations that they think is too much for them. They feel very burdened. They feel overwhelming. They don't know what to do. Then suicide becomes an option. And I think within the Ghanaian context, we do have, I mean, growing up, I don't know if it's still there, but I won't doubt it. But growing up, we used to have a saying like, oh, when people are going through problem like that mindset of thinking suicide as an escape route or as an end of something can also be problematic because and I, when you die by suicide, which we hope nobody do that, it can also be very difficult for family members and friends. Last Friday, I was teaching in class and I was telling the students about what is called suicide contagion, right? Where we've seen that sometimes there can be like a suicide swoop where if one person dies by suicide, it's reported in the news. Before you realize another person is also gone, another person is also gone. And there are ways of explaining that with some psychological theories, like it's called suicide contagion, where people learn from other people's behavior. And that's why we don't even say people commit suicide again, because committal is more of a crime. But thinking about suicide is not a crime. People attempting is not a crime. They do have genuine psychological concerns that need to be addressed. So Well, I think that is where I would put it. So the sense of belongingness, lack of connectedness, the emotional pain, the psychological pain, and the various adversities of life do contribute to all these emotional distress that can make people begin to think or consider suicide as an option. But let me say that even though a lot of people think about suicide, but only few transition to attempt. So sometimes we categorize suicide ideation in whether is it active or is it passive. It can be like when we say it's passive, it's more like a fleeting thought. Like you went through a problem and you wish you were dead or you wanted to kill yourself, but it's not like the person really wants to act on it. So those ones might be passive. They are normally not so much of a risk compared to active, where an active can be like the person thinking about it for a long period of time, consistently, and even having a plan. So though a lot of people may one point in time in their life would ever have thought about suicide, but very few people actually attempt. So for thinking about it, a lot of people may think about it, but may not actually attempt.
Wow. So now you have sharing rights.
Okay.
And this is very revealing, to be honest. I find it revealing because it appears our society is becoming very individualistic. We are becoming very self-conscious. I mean, social media stuff. We are becoming a bit self-absorbed as well. So everybody wants to achieve, everybody has some targets, and we are all going through, or most of us are going through some form of a rat race. Um, my just to bring what you're saying home, you spoke about people feeling isolated, people not feeling belonged, and then all this emotional weight and psychological weight on people. It's become a norm. Should we, first of all, should we be alarmed? And if we should, how do we contain this? Given that quite a number of people now easily say, like, oh, I wish I wasn't here. I wish I was here. And I hear it quite often, not in clinical, and not in the clinical world, even talking to regular people, they would say that I wish I wasn't here. Should we be alarmed? And if we should, what should be our focus now to help the situation?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And the simple answer to it is yes. I mean, we should be alarmed. It should be a point of concern to us. So, human as we are social animals, or social birds at best. We love to connect with people. I think those in the neuroscience and then those in the technology industry have really done very well by trying to create a lot of bridges and opportunities where people can connect. That is our nature. If you want to see how we cannot live without each other, you just have to look at what the pandemic brought to us, where we had to go through like separation, or people have to be social distancing and stuff. It was very difficult. Lockdown was so difficult because for the first time, a lot of people couldn't learn how to live on themselves. So, I mean, if people get to the point where they wish they are not connected to each other, they don't want to be alive and stuff, they wish they were not here, that is, of course, concerning. And what it also may be telling us is that there may be a problem within their social network, right? Like I said, technology lynches on the fact that it hangs on the fact that like people are engaged in social media trying to connect to each other all over the world. Imagine a world without all the social media handles. Like, how was it going to be like? Because we are connected to each other, and this makes life simple. There are theories like the social baseline theory that explains that the human brain functions at best when you are actually with people that you love and people who mean a lot to you. It's called the social baseline theory. So they realize that the brain is at an optimal place of work. Now, when people begin to feel that they are not connected, people don't love them, they are going through stress and no one is there to help them, it creates so much problem. It leads to a lot of stress. And some of these stress, like Paul, you sent to me in the message, it can really get under your skin. Right. And it can affect how the person make decisions. Some people, it can affect the executive functioning. So under stress, suicide or wish to die becomes an option. But I think when people have those concerns, attention should be drawn on those within their social network. Like, is your network even healthy? Is it even helpful? Right. One of my research is looking at how our social connections can be helpful or harmful. And a lot of, even though we know social connections can be helpful, but under some circumstances can be harmful. If you find yourself in a relationship or in a network of people that are very abusive, it's very toxic, it's not every relationship that is stable. Some are really toxic. And this toxicity can also causes a lot of stress on you, the individual. If it's characterized by betrayal, if it's characterized by people judging you and etc., then you don't really feel connected. So I think for those at the individual level, they should also begin to look for people who are very supportive. If they need to reach out to seek for help, it's so important. If they need to disengage from some activities or some relationship and then reconnect with people who would provide them support, that is good. because I'm delving into the social network, let me even say that now, initially, I think a lot of research were advocating, like if you have 3 or 4 people in your life, it's very protective of a lot of health outcomes. Like it's protective of diabetes, depression, suicide. I mean, think of it, and even mortality rates. But now studies have moved beyond that to realize that no, you don't even need a lot of people. At least one person is enough. If you have one person who is reliable, who is faithful, it's far better than having 11 people or how many people who are not reliable. So yes, you may not have a lot of people who may listen to you or show concern, but at least even if you have one person who is reliable, make good use of that person, talk to the person, because we are not built to be alone as humans. We are built to connect to each other. And our ability to do that is so protective in so many ways, from the brain level to our interpersonal level. We need that.
Wow. That's insightful. So now I think this is a good time to go into the childhood adversity, because the point is that you're saying something very very revealing. You're saying that for people who have very maybe weak or not suboptimal social network or social support, the possibility that they would suffer psychologically is very high. They may not function optimally. Now, the idea of childhood adversity, which you're going to talk about in a bit, also reveals that people who have experienced, one or more of these sometimes also struggle socially. Does that suggest that for people who have experienced childhood adversity, the possibility that they are likely to struggle psychologically because they don't seem to also, of course, without any form of help or intervention, they may not have the strength to build strong social connections? If that is a good preamble, I want you to shed some light on how adversity, like childhood adversity or small t trauma, you may want to explain all the terms, but to what extent does it, first of all, hold us back from building the right connections?
Very good question. So just touch on childhood, since we are talking about childhood. I just prepared this presentation. I'll run through it very quickly. So childhood is a very beautiful experience. I mean, it's nice to be a child. You don't have a lot of pressure on yourself, even though some children do. Not everyone gets childhood like smooth like that. But to a very large extent, is characterized by innocency. You want to connect with your friends, build bonds, family support. Because think of the child as a stranger who has come to a place for the first time. They don't really know anyone. The only person they know is their mother and probably people in their social network. So it's a period of innocency. They try to learn a lot. It's a special occasion for these children to learn more about themselves. They cause a lot of problem and trouble. Like I said, fortunately today we are celebrating Mother's Day because they play a very important role in our childhood. But not everybody gets it that way, right? Not everybody really gets their childhood smooth like that. For some people, they go through what we call childhood adversities, or what researchers call childhood adversities. So these are normally adverse situations or negative things that do happen to children or to people before their 18th birthday, because it's assumed that by the time you reach your 18th year, you would have probably become more of an adult. And just saying you're an adult basically means that your prefrontal cortex, or the part of your brain which is responsible for complex decision or executive functioning, has developed fully. Even though with the age of 18, there are still a lot of debates with it, because I think last year or so, there were a lot of debates about whether by the age of 18 would people have had their prefrontal cortex fully developed, because there have been studies that have shown that it doesn't really develop fully at the age of 18. It's kind of tipping towards I think 25. So but I don't think they are going to change the legal requirement for making decision at 18, but it's to 25. But there's a whole lot of arguments on that. But again, they try to understand the negative things that happen to a child before their 18th birthday. So for some people, it can be abuse, and the abuse can be physical abuse. It can be emotional abuse. It can be verbal abuse, right? You shout on the child, you beat the child. So if someone is going through all these forms of abuse, right, it can impact on them. And I will explain how it really impacts on their mental health. For some people, it may not necessarily be like a physical abuse, emotional abuse, or even verbal abuse. It can be a neglect where they are not getting the needed care, deprivation, right? Imagine someone who is very testy, they need water and they are not getting it consistently. In fact, studies have shown that it affects the brain development. The brain begins to shrink. There have been studies that showed children from very poor neighborhood, they gave them a size of a coin, and then kids from rich neighborhood, so they asked them to describe the coin, right? Children from poor neighborhood describe the coin as very, very, very big, like very big, and kids from rich neighborhood saw the coin to be very small. The reason is because, like, when people are deprived and then they see something for the first time, they kind of really like it, like it looks very big for them. So there are a lot of studies about when people have been deprived or of a lot of resources, how they react at the instance of it. It's very related to the psychology of poverty, how people who are considered to be poor think. So neglect is a big thing, and household dysfunction. So some of the abuses may not be directly towards the child; it may be indirect, and this is the household dysfunction. So household dysfunction might be like divorce. It can be like maybe parents who are fighting. So they are not abusing the child, they are not shouting at the child, but they always engage in fight. And the child is seeing all these things, right? They are wondering like, these people brought me here. Why are they always fighting? What is going on? Am I the problem? They don't even understand it. What is going on? So parents who are always fighting, and then if a parent is heavy in drugs, maybe drinking alcohol, using a kind of illicit substances, or maybe if one of the parents is in prison. In the US here, there is what they call the school to prison pipeline, where kids are leaving schools and ending up in jails. And there have been studies that have shown that for some of these children, they sometimes do have one of their relatives or a father or a mother who had been to jail before. So by the time this parent is coming out of jail, the child is going back. And it's not because the parent went to jail, the child is also going to jail. But sometimes the absence of the parent, right, the child don't get the needed support and care that they need. So they are likely to make decisions that may land them into a lot of issues. So just touching a little bit on the trauma. So normally when people go through all these kind of traumatic experiences, they just don't want to think about it because the thought can be very stressful. And there are different types of trauma. We have what we call like the acute trauma, which can be due to like a natural disaster, a car accident, or whatever is not so much distressing, but it causes distress. And then you have what we call the chronic kind of trauma, right? Which are repeated traumas, prolonged exposures, like the adverse childhood experience. So adverse childhood experience is part of a chronic trauma. Imagine a child being abused, and I've seen kids like that. And who have been abused for a very long time. And mind you, trauma is stored in the long-term memory because it's an episode. So someone can be like in their 50s and 60s. They may not really remember a book they read like last week or two necessarily, but they can actually remember what someone said to them or how someone abused them or how someone violated them sexually when they were probably a child. They could remember that, but they may not be able to remember maybe something that they even learned probably yesterday. And I've seen patients in their 60s who could still remember childhood abuses, but they may probably not be able to remember something that happened last year or whatever. And it's because of the way trauma is stored. It has an evolutionary kind of perspective because when you know people who hurt you, seeing them again, you need to learn how to avoid them compared to people who have been nice to you, right? And then we do have what we call like the complex trauma, which is like a lot of traumas going on together and stuff like that. But again, to touch on your question, Paul, about how these childhood traumas impact on mental health, right? With the first approach, which I'll try to make it very simple, is on the brain, right? When people are going through, and mind you, it's not only physical abuse. In fact, some research have even shown that verbal abuse, you're not beating the child physically, but the things you say to them, the abusive words you use on them, has the same impact, like as if you were using like a physical thing on them, right? But now these abuses or adverse child experience they go through, it impacts on the brain. There is what I don't want to use a technical term, but it impacts on the brain development. It increases their sensitivity to stress. So imagine a child who is always hyperactive, like they are always their sensitivity is always aroused. Like even if when someone is telling them something which is good, because they've gone through a lot of stress, they can't even appreciate it because they've been exposed to abuse for a long period of time. It makes their emotion regulation very poor. They are not able to regulate themselves very well because they don't know those skills. The parents who are supposed to have taught the child, this is good, this is bad. If someone says this, you have to respond this way. You need to say thank you. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. The parents were not there. They were busily fighting. They were busily beating the child. So this child grows up genuinely with lack of emotion regulation skills. They just don't know how to do certain things. And over time, it becomes problematic. It increases their level of anxiety. Studies have also shown that going through trauma and adversity can also change the brain reward system, right? The prefrontal cortex. It can affect their executive function, so they are not able to make decisions. So when people go through abuse, it affects their decision-making process. And when, of course, your decision-making process is impaired, under stress, suicide can be one of the options among many that the people can begin to think. For some people, it also makes them to have a negative impression about themselves. Imagine a child who has been sexually abused. I had a case of the person who was abused from, I think, the age of 8 to the age of 15. And normally, because abuse is a violation of the individual, it's directed towards themselves. Some people tend to blame themselves, not even the abuser, and then they internalize it. They have negative schemas like, I'm not good, it was my fault, nobody will love me, and so many other things, right? So it can lead to negative stigmas. It can affect their trust in relationship going forward. It can affect their attachment. So they would normally like to withdraw from people. They don't want to be connected. So it has an impact on their attachment style. And of course, so long as you are withdrawing from people, you don't trust people, you are not going to get the needed support that you should get when you are under stress, or you are not going to get enough social support because you're not relating with people very well. It just reminds me of a study that you talk about people who always are grateful, they show gratitude, just saying thank you. They are likely to get a lot of support compared to people who do not show gratitude. it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't need to explain that research, right? But most of these kids sometimes do have like this difficulty in terms of relating with people after they've gone through like an abuse. The reason is because they just want to make sure they'll protect themselves. I've talked about emotion regulation, which is very important. Other factors also like PTSD, right? People go through post-traumatic stress disorders after they've gone through several types of childhood abuses, and PTSD is a risk factor to thinking about suicide. For some people, because of these abuses, they may want to cope. And if the coping mechanism is not good because they don't have the skills, the people to help them are not available, they may use substances like marijuana, alcohol, or engage in some kind of lifestyle. And engaging in all these things, even if you have not gone through any abuse, continuous use of these substances can lead to depression, and depression can also lead to thinking about suicide. So sometimes even how they are trying to cope can be very problematic. And then for some people also, it can lead to, like I said, withdrawal. It can lead to isolation. And these are enough to cause like depression for people. And then it can lead to like thinking about suicide.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. At this point, would you like to, do you want to continue with your slides, or you want to pull it down? I want you to teach us to breathe. You've said a lot,
I know. Let me pause now.
we need to be able to breathe. So
Just a second, I'm with you guys.
so this is deep, and we want to just pause and breathe. Okay, let's just take it in. So I want you to just wherever you are, I'm not sure, some of you may be driving. If you're driving or you're in a space where you cannot do this with us, feel free, just listen to my voice. Okay, but let's just take it easy. And I want you to feel your body wherever you are. Just let's flap a bit. Okay, just let's flap a bit and feel your hands move. Okay, be mindful of it. Okay, now let's do it a bit more fast, a bit more fast, a bit more faster than it is now. And then feel the heaviness of your hands. Okay, try and feel the heaviness of your hands. All right, and then let's make it, let's slow it down, slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. All right, good. And then we all taking a deep breath. If you can, sit somewhere and let's take it in. 4 seconds in. Ready, go. Breathe in. I can't see you, but I can see you in with my mind's eye. And then breathe out gently. Once again, breathe in. And then breathe out gently. For the last time, breathe in. Gently. All right. Okay, Felix, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry, I know I spilled a lot of things out. So normally for trainings like this, sometimes we do have like I think you did the right thing, the best. We do have like contacts for like maybe call a national. If it was in the US, like I have to give like a contact, like call a national emergency crisis if it triggers something. Like you can't do a suicide not even presentation. In fact, you can't talk about suicide without giving a contact like the national emergency to call. So I think we have is 988 in the US here, where for some people talking about these things can trigger memories, and psychologists are aware, and we normally try to provide support. So I just want to say thank you, Paul, for bringing in this kind of mindfulness exercise to bring us
Yeah.
down. Thanks.
And call me. All right. So let me give some context to what you just said, and then you continue with us. So we want you to keep sending your questions in. Those of us on the call. We are getting to the top of the hour, so this is the right time to send your questions in. Now, as you are speaking, something crossed my mind, because you said a lot about childhood adversity, being abused to some extent, and even emotional neglect. And I'm thinking that it's not to spite our part of the world, but I think this is everywhere. It's just more because we were born here, raised here, we've seen it. But I think having followed the US story and other parts of Europe, it's everywhere. I mean, when I was quite young, I read a book called The Child Called It. I don't know, right? And that was an American book, and yet it detailed the fact that these things happen. So it's not an African thing. But just to bring it home, these things, I am looking at where I grew up, and I tell you what, I can count 10 homes on our lane, and I can tell you for a fact that 9 of them now that I know what I know, given some of the things you've shared, in each of those homes, there was somebody going through something. Okay. And for me, that tells the gravity of what we are dealing with. The other part is that from my PhD research, which you know about, it was largely on this. And interestingly, if you take 5 Ghanaian adults, 18 and above, 2 of them will report childhood adversity. Okay. Now, it looks like this thing is more common than we even think it is. And that also suggests, given all that you said, it suggests that some of our struggles in life may be pinned to these things. Our decision making, our judgment, our emotional dysregulations, our relationship problems, our parenting problems, our choices, our money making issues, and all those kinds of things may be tied to these things.
Right.
My question is, what should we do? If 9 out of 10, based on my own little observation of my neighborhood, almost everybody has been through something. What should we do if we have something like this going on, especially if we've had these experiences and sometimes we feel suicidal?
Yeah, very good question. Especially with adverse childhood experiences like the trauma and things like that. So the first thing normally we should do is to prevent it. But we know it's always not the case. We can prevent some of them. So the first thing is prevention. Prevention. We need to prevent parents, or parents should prevent the whole approach of abusing their children, whether verbally, whether emotionally, whether physically. And it's not only about parents. Sometimes it can be people within the child's network. Mind you, the adversity is from the ages of from birth all the way to the 18th birthday, right, or before they turn the 18. So for some people, it might be at different stages. Maybe when they were a child, it was mostly related to their family or their parents. And as they grew up, maybe going to school, in high school, before they even get to university and stuff like that, it may be some kind of trauma or abuse and stuff due to their friends or the kind of friends that they have. So it can vary. It may not always be parents. But to work on that, the first thing is prevention, right? And even though prevention, we do talk about it a lot in literature, the ones that can be done. For example, parents should prevent engaging in physical fights in the presence of their children, right? You don't have to let them see, because when parents are engaged in what is called intimate partner violence, it affects these children, right? So if it can be prevented, it should be good. If parents should avoid engaging in like maybe using illicit drugs or substance use because of these kids, it can be helpful. So the ones that can be prevented, it is good if they are prevented. There are others too that we can't really do much about it. But again, for those other ones, we should provide support to people who have gone through those kind of experiences. At the individual, and I'll come back to the support again, at the individual level, what the individual you can do, especially if you're stress or the adversity that you're experiencing, it's not something that is related to like maybe a family structure, but it's a friendship structure, right? Just like we all need different types of vitamins and minerals and etc. to grow and to nourish our body, we need different kinds of people. The issue is that some people may not be helpful, others may be helpful. So at the individual level, if you are in a relationship or you find yourself in a space that is really maybe abusive, is toxic, it's not really improving your mental health, you also have the opportunity and the choice to change the kind of friends and the kind of people that you work with, because it's very important. The people in your social network really plays a role in helping shape your mental health issue. So at the individual level, there are things that can be done. You can avoid or you can also change, because sometimes you may not be able to avoid, but sometimes talking to a professional too might be very helpful. The other thing that we also ask people to do, which links to the last thing that I said, is if you have gone through some of these issues and then you need to talk to a professional, not necessarily going to see a clinical psychologist, because it may come with some limitations. You may not be able to assess so many reasons. If you can assess one, perfect. But if you can assess, at least find a trusted friend, a trusted family member, someone in your faith community, in your church, in your mosque, wherever you can find the person, and you can share, because talking to someone also helps to relieve the burden. There is this catharsis effect when people come for therapy. It also helps to release the burden to a very large extent. So the first advice is always, let's prevent it. Let's not abuse people. Let's not hit up on people, children, right from this period of time, developmental phase of their life. Let's avoid it. If we can't avoid, and sadly it happened, and you, the individual, you can change. You can regulate who you relate with, who you talk to. I had someone who was telling me that she had a friend, whenever the person called, the person is always giving her like a negative vibe, discouraging her. And I'm like, you know what? Your phone has what do we call it? Do not disturb, but you have other function. It's not every call you should pick. So you should be in charge to a very large extent if you can really regulate that. And if you can't and it's overwhelming, the third thing is to seek for support, especially when you realize that it's making you to withdraw from people, you don't trust people, you are beginning to become very sad, your decision making is impaired, it's affecting your sleep because of what you've gone through, the memories, or it's also making you to begin to think about suicide. At that stage, then you need to really talk to someone, and getting a professional to talk to is the best. It's very helpful because that is what we are trained to provide, those kind of support services to people. So Paul, I think that
Wow, that's insightful. So, that's a good one, and a few questions have come in. Before I ask these questions, let me just ask you this.
okay.
Tell us a bit about emotional neglect, okay? Because presently I find that people are becoming a bit aware of this whole physical abuse and verbal abuse. People are becoming a bit more aware. But we are living in a very fast-paced world. We are becoming busy parents, busy uncles and aunties. And what are some of the subtle things we do that can communicate neglect to kids?
Very good. I think so. The pandemic had a double-edged effect. I don't know about when I was in Ghana by then, but I think the first one was that it brought everybody home. But bringing everybody home did not really solve the problem because we were still caught up on our devices. And when these kids wanted to talk to their parents, some parents, what they do, those who can afford, they buy tablets for the children, like, oh, just be on your tablet. Yeah, I mean, have games and fun with your kids. So if someone is a child and they are home and they think, oh, today mommy is not going to work, mommy probably is going to work from home and stuff like that. But then they think they are going to have time to talk with you, to play with you, and etc. Right? But you are rather busy on your phone. You are rather busy behind your laptop. You're not creating time for these kids. They feel very neglected. So you can have a parent who they are home, but they're actually not at home in the minds of the children. I think we read a paper back home, back in school, where kids whose parents were working from home during the pandemic period, they were asked were their parents really at home. The parents were at home actually, but the kids said they were not there because it's not about your physical presence. They need your time. They need your attention, right? And I think we carry these things again into relationship. Imagine if you're in a relationship or you're married to someone, and then your partner is home, but all the time they are busy on their phone. They are not giving you the attention. They are not talking to you. They are spending less time with you. It creates a lot of problem. Now, for kids, this emotional neglect actually impacts on so many things they have to do. One, there are a lot of research that have shown that parents who do not really have consistent communication or like normally spend little time with their children, it delays their production of speech. Because think about it, I mean, language acquisition is it's a mystery as to how the brain we begin to make meaning out of words and things. And kids learn these languages, right? So if you're the parent that you're supposed to spend time with them, talk with them, let them build vocabularies. Because how children learn languages, they start from like one word, ma, da, water, this, then it goes to two, then it goes to three. Now, if you are busy, you are not spending time with them, it delays their production of language. They are not able to talk very quickly. It will surprise you to know that a lot of people in Silicon Valley, like the top people like Bill Gates and what do we call it, Elon Musk and stuff like that, most of them, there are strict restrictions as to their children using tablets and social media. Even in the USA, there are parents who do not allow their kids to use phone until a particular age of their life. And the reason is because of the fact that you need to interact with these kids. They don't need the tablets now. What they need is you. It wasn't the tablet that gave birth to them. They want to feel you. They want to talk to you. They want to be able to engage you. The more you do that, children have theory of mind. It tells them over time that I'm not needed. They don't need me. I'm neglected. And when they begin to have that schema, they begin to think that way, it can affect how they relate with other people. It can lead to loneliness. It can lead to they feeling very isolated. And if you've brought someone to an environment, this is their first time coming there, and then like how we say it in Ghana, baby no akofana, but then you are not giving the person the needed attention, it can make them feel isolated and lonely. And then sometimes the issue of burden, they may feel like they are even a burden to the person, and nobody wants to be a burden to anyone. So then if they are really under stress, suicide can be one of the options. So the emotional neglect is not just the parents' absence, but you can be present. But if you're not giving the child the needed attention to build that kind of bond, that kind of communication, meeting the child's needs is considered a neglect. And in fact, in some cases, even in marriage, under some conditions, you can actually be sued if you are neglecting your partner, like emotionally, not even physically, emotionally, you are not providing the emotional need, because it's equally important when it comes to like relationship building. And for kids, it's so important because they learn if mommy is happy, they begin to know like the facial expression when you are happy. They begin to know when you are sad, right? So, and it makes sense when you think of children who the mental health of their parents impacts on them. So children who are born to parents who are depressed are also likely to be very depressed. And the same thing you might think is genetic, but sometimes it's social, how they learn in the environment, right? So if you're not really spending time with them, how do you expect the child to know what is anger when they go out? Because they've not seen you expressing that to them again. Because they have to learn it from home. When we say charity begins at home, they learn all these things. When they are doing something wrong and you are happy, you are smiling at them, or you are giving them a facial recognition, they should be able to pick up, like, this face shows that mommy is not happy. This face shows that mommy is happy. So I should continue to do what I am doing. If you delete all these things, the child cannot read cues. They become very poor in reading social cues. They become very poor when they go outside to know what is right, what is wrong. If somebody frowns at them, they just don't really pick it up, unless maybe it comes with some punishment, right? So the neglect doesn't really create that emotional stress, but you deprive the child of a whole learning experience that they may now have to learn it the hard way later in life, which is not helpful for them. Yeah.
Wow. That's insightful. So the little things we do, like a child is coming to spend time with us and then we lock the door, or the child is sitting right next to us and we are on our phone, and the child tries to get access to our phone and we tell them, wait, let me finish. Stuff like that. It's very, very little things like that.
Yeah. It sends a clear communication to the child that you are not needed. And they will try 1, 2, 3. After some time, they will stop. They get the message, like, you don't need me. And for some parents, what they do is that they just give them a tablet, So you're telling the child, I don't need you, just be on this tablet. So what they are doing here in the US, in some cases, they create like a time where the parent communicates with the child, like, hey, I'm going to be working between this time and that time. I'll be on break, and then the break, no phone, no electronics. It's just you and the child. Children are very understanding. They are not difficult or complicated. We've all been kids before. If you let them understand, they'll go by the rules. Like, okay, I'm doing this. When I finish, we are going to spend time together, and let them lead. You don't come to play with them and then you want to dictate what you should do. Like, okay, let's draw. No, tell them, what do you want us to do? Okay, I want us to sing. I want us to watch this. Yeah, let them take the lead. Let them feel that sense of agency. It builds their self-confidence. It makes them to feel like my ideas are right. I mean, I told mommy, let us sing, let us watch this, and mommy followed. I know for the next hour or two, daddy is with me and this and that and that. You don't come back from work and you have frowned your face because you have an issue with your boss or your supervisor or whatever. It's not a child's fault. And when they're talking to you, you don't want to mind them. And can't you see that I'm not happy? Like, what are they don't really get all these things. So the little things really do matter to them. And some of these things, they may not react immediately, but over time it builds up. And then they begin to know that, okay, this person may not really need me. And trust me, kids know things. Not be able to have the right words to articulate it. If parents are not happy, if they are fighting, if there are problems at home, the kids can measure. In fact, some have argued that they're able to measure the energy at home. If the parents are not, they know they may not have the right words to communicate. They know. We shouldn't think they don't know. They know. They just cannot express or communicate what is happening. But the challenge is, what do they do with this information? If they don't know what to do with it, it can be so problematic to them.
Right. Wow. I'm sure you can spend the whole day talking about this. Let me just ask you the question. So someone is asking, what are some immediate things you can do in the moment when you feel suicidal?
All right. So that's a good question. I think last 2 weeks or so, we're having a discussion at our lab. We're thinking about preventing ideation, people from thinking about suicide, right? So there are 2 schools of thoughts. One believes that you could prevent people from thinking about it. Others believe that no, you can't really prevent people from thinking about it. And thinking about suicide can be passive. People are just stressed and they just wish like they were dead or they want to kill themselves, but they may never act on it. A lot of people will think about it and will never act on it. So you may not necessarily want to put in measures to prevent something, but what can be done when I'm thinking about it to prevent me from acting on it, right? And so I think that is where this question comes in, which makes a lot of sense. So one, whenever you start having these suicide ideation or thinking, the first thing you should do, look for someone, a trusted person. And that's why most of these things are embedded in our social context, right? The social support that we need. If there is a trusted person that you can call, not even to talk about suicide necessarily, but if you can call a loved one, someone that you love or someone that you care. If you think it's so difficult or distressing that you want to tell the person you are thinking about these things, please do, right? So linking up with a very good person or someone you trust is very important. It's part of like a safety plan. Know who to call. It's important because if you are thinking about killing yourself and you don't know who you can call to help you, and the reason why people may be thinking, what can I do to stop this? Because some people just don't want to act on it, but the thoughts are there. So what do you do? And that is where you need to have someone to call. If you don't have anyone to talk to, it can be a problem. So at least make sure in safety planning, especially at a clinical level, we try to identify who do you consider a trusted person, right? It shouldn't just be anyone. It should be someone who is trustworthy, someone who is reliable. It shouldn't be so much. It can just be one person. Sometimes we just need one reliable person in our lives. So it can just be that one person you can call. Either you talk to the person about how you are feeling, or you talk about a different conversation or something else. So that is one. The second thing is, if you find yourself in an environment where you think that because of the things around you, maybe you can hurt yourself, you can harm yourself, it makes sense to leave that particular space. Don't be there. Just leave that particular space. Okay. It also helps you to be able to disengage from one activity to doing the other. There are other things that sometimes people can also do, maybe engaging in a different activity. So you think about the suicide, but you also decide to, you're not preventing that, you're not pushing the thoughts away. Okay, I want to kill myself, but I also have this thing to do, like other productive things that you can do. And with time, you realize that there may be other important things in your life other than just terminating it. Other people have also found beginning to reflect on the things that they think are meaningful to them, right? For some people, it might be family. Like, what is going to happen to my child? What is going to happen to my friend? I have this vision. I have this plan. I have this project I want to complete. You begin to have a sense of meaning and purpose. When people don't think that they have a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. They think that they are deaf, nobody is going to be affected, nobody even cares about them. It heightens the risk. But when you think that no, I do have people that I do care about them, this person will be affected, that person will be affected, my mom, my dad, my siblings, and etc. You think about the effects. It also helps you to disengage from thinking about suicide. It doesn't take it away, but it reduces the propensity of thinking about it for a very long time. But finally, the big one is if it becomes very persistent, then you may have to really get a professional care. And in that case, when you come to therapy, there are a lot of interventions that can help you to reduce any form of underlying emotions or any form of triggers that might be leading to that. Because mind you, the thoughts may be in response to something that you are going through. So we may not just focus on just what you are thinking. We'll focus on what are the risk factors. What is making you to think about that? Is it your marriage? Is it job? Is it relationship? Is it maybe some childhood traumas or adversities or some stresses that you are going through? And if you're able to take those stresses away or help to reduce it, then the thought will also go. Because sometimes the thoughts are in response to them. So at a clinical level, we spend a lot of time trying to find what might be like the risk factors that you are going through, which is leading to that, right? And then we would deal with that. But at your own individual level, having a trusted person has been found to be helpful. Taking yourself out of an environment that can increase the risk of an attempt has also been found to helpful. And engaging in other productive activities or also reflecting on your sense of purpose and meaning can also be very helpful for you as an individual. But the big one, if it's too persistent, please seek for clinical care where we delve into what is really generating these thoughts, like the risk factors, and then we can help from there.
Wow, that's insightful. So a whole battery of things
Yeah,
we
I
need.
know.
And that is good because at least then we have numerous options to pick from whenever a person is experiencing this. Thank you very much for that one. The second question is, what can you do for someone who says to you that they feel suicidal?
Very good. So first of all, don't judge. Let me say here, there was a research that was done by Columbia University. They did ask people if they do have secrets. They were trying to look at whether people have secrets. And then they realized everybody have a secret in life. And the next question that they asked them, are you willing to share your secret? A lot of people said yes. The next question was, between a human being and an AI, who would you like to share your secret with? Surprisingly, some people chose AI, mostly adult population. And the reason why most of them said, well, I have secret, I'll tell only an AI, not a human being, is because some of them like, the AI doesn't have emotions. The AI will not judge me. So what clinicians use those information from these research is more like, then people really have genuine concern that they want to express, but they don't want to tell someone who is going to judge them. If I know that you are going to judge me, I'm not going to tell you. If I know the AI will not judge me, why? I'll just tell the AI because I want to share my secret, right? So the whole point is that we don't want to be judged. So if someone is telling that they are having thoughts of killing themselves, right? Don't express shock like, why do you want to kill yourself? It's bad. And don't, that labeling of bad, good is judgment. Don't judge, right? Just tell the person, I am here to support you. Let me know if there is any help, any assistance that I can do to help you. It's unfortunate that I'm hearing that you are going through this, but things do happen. Validate the person's experience and let them know that you are ready to offer support. There is support. Because normally with suicide, people think that there is no way out, right? And like I was saying, within the Ghanaian context, people think, uanasa, so if the person thinks that they are going through a lot of issues in life, whether being in debt, whether being it cause, whether they don't feel belong, people don't like them, they are going through abuse, one problem after the other, and they think that when they die, that is the end of it. It's like an escape route, right? But you let them know that I'm here. Let me know any support that I can give. Sometimes the support people need may not be money. They just need someone to listen to them. They just need someone that they can pour out their concerns to. For some people, it's enough. I mean, and Paul, you will confirm, people come for therapy, and there is this concept or phenomenon called naturalistic healing, where people get well over time, not because of the therapy. Like, they find a way of figuring out things. So long as they come and they keep talking to you, they gain insight, they now begin to reflect, they now begin to understand, and they may not even come to therapy again, not because they are annoyed with you, but there's a naturalistic healing effect. Like, they get well over time because they themselves have been able to figure out. So sometimes when people are talking to you, they don't want to be judged, they don't want you to criticize them or be insensitive. So the point I'm making is, be there for the person. Let them know that you hear them, you feel them, you know they are going through a lot, and they should let you know if there is anything you can do to support them. That alone is validating and is very, very, very helpful. People need to hear that. So now that is the first. And secondly, if it's still persistent, you realize that the support is something that maybe they may need a medical attention, maybe they may need some psychological service and etc. You try to provide them, like maybe leave them. There have been occasions where I have to leave my counseling room and send patients to go to a psychiatrist, because we run a system whereby the clinic and then the hospitals are together. So there is a way you can just walk. So I just walk them over to the psychiatry, make an appointment for, what do we call it, an evaluation, or to get like a prescription. And then we come back to the room to continue like therapy. It feels very supporting, right? So they need support, because we talk about perceived burdensomeness and people not feeling belonged. But if you are that one person that makes them feel belong, you make them feel heard, you are not judging them, you are providing them with support, you are not only listening to them, you are checking up on them, you are calling them, finding out how they are. Sometimes you may even have to change the environment that they are in. If they are staying at a place that you realize that it's a risk to them, and you need to get someone to stay with them over time, and you have to do that, that may be your contribution. And trust me, the person will never forget your support and help, because so long as they've reached out to you that they are thinking about this, yes, the thought is there, but they don't want to act on it. They need help, they need support, and that the least you can do is to be able to provide those kind of genuine support and not being judgmental, right? So your presence is important, validating is important, and sometimes, like I said, if you need to even provide them with some instrumental care, or change the environment, or send them to a hospital or a clinic, or make a call on their behalf, that would be greatly appreciated. Particularly if you're not a professional, you could provide these kind of support. And if you're a Christian too, or you have a person of faith, you could sometimes pray with them, but that is not the only thing. But at least it gives them an assurance about like the support, both spiritual support, emotional support, and everything as well.
Wow. That's a good one. That's a very, very good one. So, I mean, what I'm hearing is that we need to be a bit more self-aware, so that when people confide in us, we can listen to them from a place of validation and not judgment, and
Right.
then go a little extra by supporting them to get the needed care if they need that care. At least be present and give them a listening. That listening, yeah. That's super. Now, the last question is that sometimes the question says that sometimes people act so good when they are having suicidal ideas, and usually those who die by suicide may play that, they are so good, they are so happy, everything is okay, and then before you know it, they would have done whatever it is to themselves. How can we tell when, especially, particularly, let me just add a little layer to it, especially when the person has hinted in the past that I'd like to do this, okay, and maybe you've been able to support once in a while. Is the question clear?
Very, very clear. I'm trying to share a screen, attempting to answer the question a little bit. Wow. A little bit. So and that's a very good question. So the point is that mostly with suicide, like I said, over 50 years of doing suicide research, there's this meta-analysis that shows that over 50 years of doing suicide research, researchers can still, or clinicians can still not really be able to place a hand on what really is causing it. But we know a lot of risk factors, fair enough, and protective factors as well. So the point is that, yes, a lot of suicide death, Paul, it's also surprised you to know that a lot of people die by suicide after they have left the emergency room. So in the US here, when someone is thinking about suicide and they are really at risk, the first point of call is the emergency. So a lot of people die by suicide after they leave the emergency, which is unfortunate, because you would have thought before they leave the emergency, there are checks. We do screening, you do the mental state examination, there is a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation to make sure that the thought that brought the person to the emergency is no longer there. And most people will screen negative for most of them. Like, I'm not thinking about it, I'm not doing this, I'm okay, I'm done, blah, blah, blah. They will take negative for everything, nothing positive. They are okay. You discharge them only for them to get home, and then they die by suicide, which is also concerning. Like, is it that, because we only, our current evaluation system is asking the question, right? If you actually, are you thinking about it? What if the person says no when they're actually thinking about it? So it's a very difficult thing. And that is how come sometimes you might see someone who really looks okay, all happy, nothing wrong, but they are going through a lot of things that people may not be able to detect, and then their death may come as a shock, or maybe their attempt may come as a shock. It can also be very common with people who have had previous suicide attempts before, right? So normally people have had histories of attempts. So let me say the risk of suicide also varies based on attempt history. If someone has attempted multiple times versus someone who is attempting for the first time, the risks are very different. So if someone has had like multiple times of trying to attempt suicide and stuff like that, they may have very detailed plan. They may know how to go about it versus someone who is attempting for the first time. You did mention of some of my research work. One of the research that we did, we realized that people who attempt suicide are very good with planning compared to those who just think about it, right? So normally those who attempt, they are so good, their executive function is so well organized that they can plan in such a way that people may not even detect, or people may not even be around by the time that they want to kill themselves or die by suicide, compared to people who are thinking about it. So it should tell you, if people have histories of attempts, because of the experiences, they know how to plan, right? So yes, the question is valid. It may be very difficult to detect. However, we should be thinking, why is it that someone will be all happy with us, smiling with us, but they can't really tell us what they are going through? That is a big question. What is really wrong? Is it that they don't trust us? Is it that we've given them reasons to think that we are not reliable? Is that they feel a sense of disconnection? Is it that maybe our relationship with them is superficial? Is it that maybe they feel that they are being a burden to us, or they are not really integrated so well, or they are going through something which is too much, such that they don't think people can help them, right? So we shouldn't be focusing on the person necessarily, Paul. I think we should be focusing on what are we doing which will make someone act all happy, all nice with us, but they cannot really open up to be vulnerable to us and tell us when they are really going through an issue. So for me, the focus shouldn't be about the person necessarily. It should be about within the ecosystem. What is going on? Why can't anyone pick up that this person is going through something? Why can't this person even open up to someone? And humans are cognitive and rational beings. If they can't tell you and all of us, I mean, if I don't trust someone, I'm not going to open up. So sometimes it may not be about the person. It may be about the environment and the system that we've created, which is not providing people the trust to be sincere and genuine and open up. So they'll show you what you have to see, right? But again, just to probably conclude on this, there are some early things that we can do. Preventive measures, right? If you begin to see, I think I was talking about warning signs. Oh yeah, warning signs when people begin to withdraw. Some people may not withdraw. They will be with you, but they will still go and act it, right? So, but again, organically, when people begin to withdraw, people begin to talk about they are feeling hopeless or worthless. And now with social media, you can see on people's what do we call it, status, they can put some emojis and things that are very suggestive that they just feel like giving up, they want to die, right? You should pick up on those things. If I see some of those things, reach out to the person, hey, is everything okay? Like, is there any way I could help you and stuff like that? Reach out, right? And people start talking about death, people start having plans, in the USA or in some places, people may want to be giving out their properties, their will, and stuff like that. And like I talked about, when people also start having histories of attempt, if they've attempted multiple times, it can also lead to that. And when they also start engaging in behaviors like substance abuse, right? It's not like the substance abuse will let them kill themselves, but it also affects, it leads to depression. It can also impact on hopelessness. And then depression has a component of thinking about death. And then if they have a plan, they may probably act on it. But I think the big thing is that we should be available and be asking ourselves, why will people be nice with us? They smile with us, we talk with them, but we never even realize that they were going through something. What are we not doing as a society? What are we not doing as friends very well? Instead of thinking that is the person is going through something. We are supposed to be there to help and provide the support, right? So yes, the person may not talk to us, they may not open up, but the big one is why? Why? So I think that is what I will have to say, Paul. Yeah, I feel like we shouldn't be looking at the person alone, but we should also look at some of the things in the environment. Right.
This is fantastic, and I'm very grateful for your time. It's been difficult finding you, even though you are my brother, but I know all the things are involved in and the load on you. So I can't thank you enough. And for all of those on the call, I told them last week that you had to get a medical evaluation, and I told them to pray for you, and I pray for you.
That's nice. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So yes, we pray that you keep doing all that you're doing and come back and help Ghana.
Amen.
That's for you. And for everyone on the call, you may send your love and your gratitude to Felix for the good work he's done. He's a trailblazer in this suicide trauma mix, and we pray that they can churn out a lot of research to support all of us. I noticed there's a last question in there, but we'll send that question to you so you respond to the person.
Yeah, thank you too and your team for making this happen. I really appreciate the opportunity. I don't take it for granted. So thank you everyone for your time and the questions. And I hope I was able to provide some helpful feedbacks on that. So thank you, Paul. And then to everyone on the call, I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
So we
And
want to
I
do
appreciate your prayers too. Yeah, thank you for your prayers too.
Yeah, we want to do this quickly. Next month, we are bringing a woman in to tell us about emotional regulation among women. And I'm sure the boyfriends and the husbands will join so they can learn a bit. Thank you. God bless you. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.